I'm not sure which screen I'm on, so we'll try this one. That is not the right one.
Let's go to Matt, because Matt was able to present his screen. So let's go to Matt and we can just start there. And then I know Dave has lots of good content. So let's just go right to Dave after Matt.
Right.
Can you see my slides now? I can sure go.
Fire away, Liz.
Yeah, we can. If you want to do an abbreviated version, Liz, maybe a minute, and then Matt a minute, and then we'll hand it off to Dave.
Very good. Well, thank you all for being here. Sorry for the tardy delay. Welcome to the DUG4GOV version of the June meetup. Just real quickly, if you're not familiar with DUG, we are your free community. We offer free individual memberships, and I am doing an abbreviated version, but you're all welcome to contact me later for more information. As part of your free membership, we offer multiple programs. The one that I'm going to highlight today is our newest one, which is our DUG webinars. This is something we just kicked off this month. And as a member, you'll receive notifications of those webinars, and it's all on really great educational product content. We've got a couple of regional events happening this summer. Would love to have your guys' involvement with those as well. And last but not least, DynamicsCon Live. So Dynamics User Group is the host of DynamicsCon Live, if you're familiar with this event. Our next in-person event will be in May of 2024 in Denver, Colorado. We do have early bird pricing registration going on right now. So you can visit us at dynamicsusergroup.com to get all of this lovely information. So my quick intro. I will stop sharing and let you guys take it away.
All right, so I'll do this very briefly as Dave kind of pulls up the intro slide for DUG4GOV, but just to kind of a reminder, our DUG4GOV is our national group focused on state and local government agencies using Dynamics 365 and Power Platform, where we share challenges, best practices, and accomplishments in an effort to help our agencies really progress on the platform. So we meet every fourth Tuesday of every month. But the main message here is that we will be off in July. So I want everyone to kind of take some time, enjoy the summer a little bit. And we were going to resume on August 22nd. We'll post what that agenda will look like soon. And look forward to catching everybody on August 22nd. So without further delay, Dave Bailey, please take it away on our topic for June. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much, team. So today's session is going to be mostly to get your mind thinking a little bit about AI and how the term hyperautomation, the Power Platform, and Dynamics fit into that conversation for both yourself as IT professionals, leadership inside your organization, and the employee base and the community that you serve. Conversationally, we're all quite aware that AI is a big ticket item when it comes to what's happening in the world, how it's being used, the implications, the opportunity that it creates. So as we start looking at that and breaking it down into some manageable, tactical pieces of things we can do today to prepare ourselves, take advantage of that technology safely and responsibly. That's what we're going to kind of go over in the next, let's say, 50 minutes or so. So have you heard of anything about this AI stuff? It's gotten so prolific that my parents in their late 70s and kids as young as 4 and 5 years old are asking about AI. I was at 2 graduations recently, one at the Massachusetts Maritime Academy, one at a high school, and elected officials and Marine captains were speaking about AI, as well as high school graduates speaking about how they used AI and ChatGPT to write their speeches at the graduation. But those are the light uses and the common uses of AI. And when we look at business, feature, function, capability, and where it can help and where we have to be careful, there's more to it. So we have different learning opportunities and pieces of information that I want to go through today as we talk about this. So one of the cool things that we had this is about a month and a half ago, we were at Harrisburg University in Pennsylvania, and we were using a virtual assistant to suggest different ways to use AI in government. Just as an example, it started coming up with different places to show us where we could have good advantage with AI. But I think if we're being responsible out of the gate, we have to understand some of the terminology and the technology that's involved in artificial intelligence. And I think it is important to note that AI is not as new as a lot of people assume. It's for the first time, many of them are using the term AI in conversation. They're figuring out how it fits inside their world. But the reality of it has been around for quite a while, all the way back in the days of IBM creating an artificial intelligence and actually coining the phrase back in that time. It's been used in different facets of our world throughout different types of technology, everything from cars to computers to medical, you name it. I was at a roundtable exercise about a month ago, and I took a couple of the excerpts from the conversation at the table I was at to share them with you guys, just as a thought process that I think was interesting, right? So the possibilities are literally endless as long as we have power, right? So AI requires a lot of power. Matter of fact, conversationally, if we look at artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the things that we're able to do with it, the compute resources, the storage, and everything else that goes into it, power is a consideration, but without power, there's no AI, which is a pretty interesting concept from a dependency perspective. This one was great. If we build our own data model and train it, and it begins to learn, have we thought of who's going to take care of it, nurture it, so that it grows up to be a responsible part of our team? And if you have kids, there's some parity there, of course, right? But to think about how we take care of, nurture, and grow along with AI as a capability and what it becomes, I thought that was rather proverbial. Shared that one with you. And then this one's pretty interesting. If we borrow or subscribe to a third-party data model, like many of us, as we look to use data in our business, or we might even have data inside our organization, our government, our citizen information, we might get requests for that data to use in models. And then how's that going to be governed, right? Will we use AI to govern our use of AI? And you laugh, but that actually is probably the scenario, right? We're going to need something that can keep track of this better, quicker, faster as it grows and our usage gets into the equation more. And then, excuse me, can I press 2 to opt out? And while that's somewhat funny, the reality is that there is already legislature, both federally and at a state and local government level, proposed to allow a citizen to opt out of AI or how it might be used inside their world. So that's an interesting paradigm that we have to consider as we look at where we're going. And then, of course, what's our liability? Are we being responsible? And do we have a policy on this yet? Our team internally tracks all the different policy that's coming out through the industry to see how and where it goes, how wide it is, how narrow it is. It's a very interesting paradigm to have technology at our fingertips that we don't yet necessarily have policy to address. I strongly urge everybody on the call and anybody that you work with to go out to Microsoft's website where you can just plug into the search responsible AI. And it's not about product, it's about Microsoft's and the way that we look at the use of AI, where it's going. I think there's a lot of groundbreaking type terminology and concepts that the Responsible AI site provides. But additionally, there's a number of tools on that website that also show us and give us an example of how we can start to organize the data and the information and policy processes that we want to have in place to harness AI. So definitely go out there and check that out. So a couple definitions. As you know, if you're in the IT space, we're able to come up with acronyms pretty quickly. I find it a challenge once in a while as we step into new government customers to find out the new acronyms they throw at us, either for their systems or their programs that they're running. But it's always entertaining on the acronym front. But these are a few acronyms that you probably should just get a real good initial learning of. So many people I talk to about ChatGPT have no idea what GPT stands for. And I think it's an interesting concept, right? Generative pre-trained transformer over a large language model. A lot of terms that get thrown out, and the use of AI seems like it's a very large concept to break down, but there are a few key pieces. This deck will be shared out as part of the presentation and it's recorded. I'm not going to read through each one of those, but do yourself a favor and learn some of these fundamental and foundational technology definitions so that you can be part of that conversation and know where they're coming from. Some additional terms that I think are pretty important when we get into deep learning as far as how our data models are put in place. First thing that we're getting asked from a BizApps perspective, whether it's Dynamics or Power Platform or anything else inside the Microsoft Cloud, is how can I and where can I start organizing my data so that I have it at my fingertips to try using AI or experiment or create a model or do something in that space to get using it. But if you don't understand how to train a data model and what that actually means, you're going to have to invest in some education on those terms as well. And I put these out here as some fundamental terms that everybody should know. And when we talk about industry, and we specifically focus on government, I thought that these statistics were pretty incredible. 75% of governments will have at least 3 enterprise-wide hyperautomation initiatives launched or underway by 2024. And if you're not familiar with the term hyperautomation, I'm going to share a little bit about that. But essentially, from a layman's perspective, it's doing more with less. It's being able to speed up the way that we automate and innovate with business applications and software and process and people all in the same equation. So being able to hyper automate is really essentially do more with less. Most of our government customers are not able to do a lot of hiring right now, if any. Most of them are looking at shortfalls with number of staff that they're going to have out into the future. And we're looking to technology to help us bridge those gaps, to help us achieve more, automate more, and function. Okay, 60% of government AI and data analytics investments aim to directly impact real-time operational decisions and outcomes by 2024. And 80% of government organizations are still at that initial digital maturity stage to take advantage of that. This is from a Accenture report study. The credits are on the back of the deck. I saw a question there from the chat. Okay. But when we start to look at the tactical expertise that we require and the pieces that we can actually affect change with, instead of trying to boil the ocean, one of the best things we can do is try to break it up into achievable pieces, places where we already have some investment, we have some expertise, but we want to start making some progress. So what processes out there from a citizen perspective can we improve upon? Efficiency is a term that a lot of us throw around, but to really make something more efficient, defining what that is at a process level and how we're accountable to make sure it's working properly, we're improving it, it's saving time, it's saving money. Defining those things up front is a big task. And I think that's one of the key aspects of a tactical component when people try to address AI, that they're really missing that part of it. They're just so excited about using it that they forget a little bit about what they're actually trying to fix. Data and analytics, again, big terms, but if we focus on small components of our business where we can get some traction and start to learn, what's the amount of data we're trying to work with? What is the value of it, the integrity of it? How do we come about getting that data? How do we protect it? Picking a data load to actually start working with when it comes to AI. There's some tools and tactics that we have as well that I'm going to go into on how you can start selecting that data, begin building a data model, and applying some of the AI tools we're going to finish up with today and talk about. And then integrate and automate. automation is, I think, the first place we start to think of AI. Some of us a few years back started using a term called robotic process automation. And we have products like unattended robotic process automation, attended RPA. But how do we use AI to take other tasks and bring those into the workloads that we have and shorten that up? So anytime you're going to step out onto that first AI project, I think these are the four most critical components that we should address on the data, the process, the outcome we're trying to achieve, and define that right up front. Okay. So we talked a little bit about some of the challenges that we have, but what I thought was interesting is we used a little AI on the data that we pick up from the field. When we meet with various customers in the public sector, state and local government, federal government, and three things across the top: reduced workforce, consistent communication challenges, and actionable citizen engagement. The thing that's interesting, and we know this, but I don't think we think about it in context, is that we have people that are later on in life that are not as familiar and comfortable with technology. If you tell them, for example, that you want them to use a virtual assistant or a chat bot, for example, I can tell you right now that both of my parents have absolutely no desire to speak to a robot through a computer. They will do everything and press every button they possibly can to get to a human being. They want to speak to somebody. So that's one end of the spectrum on how we handle communications, or that omni-channel approach to customer engagement. And then we have our kids who could be 5 feet away from you and text you and ask you what's for dinner. That's because that's easier than actually having a conversation sometimes, right? And if you have one of those, I'm sure you can relate. So it's an interesting paradigm that all of those people from a citizen and public perspective still need to be able to come in to our government and have an interactive experience and be able to depend upon that technology to get answers, information, apply for services, sign up for different events that might be happening in the community, you name it. So when we look at the two ends of that, we have the citizen side of it and we have the internal side of it. How does AI fit into that equation? How can a virtual assistant that's powered with some AI capability provide better, quicker, faster answers to my employee inside my government organization that wants to help them provide that service? And at the same time, how can we use some of that same information to knock down some call volume, get a citizen engaged a little quicker, better, faster than they're used to engaging? And how can they trust that technology? Well, AI and virtual assistant technology, or power virtual agents, as you hear us refer to them in the Power Platform, are all part of that constant contact, if you will, with the citizens that we serve. So I think that this is pretty nice to know that without exception, these are the most common things that we see from a public service perspective on where we see AI and virtual assistant technology delivering value to the public as we speak today. So when we look at challenges that we can address, navigating trustworthy AI, policy and practice is something that is net new, extremely new for most of the leadership that we work with in state and local government. It just is. It's not something that many of us were planning on having to address financially. If we look at the budget life cycle for a lot of the customers that we work with, and all of you attending today, that budget cycle many times for large ticket items is set 2 and 3 years in advance in some cases. So if we weren't planning on addressing AI this past year or this coming year, what are some of the things we can do to prepare ourselves for being able to leverage that technology, get involved with it, learn a little bit more about it as we start to ease into its use? Right, so there's some things we can do there. And most of our IT resources, they are watered down with maintaining the existing technology stack that they have and figuring out how to cut out time to learn new technology. So we have a lack of that AI and data model or learning capability there because they just don't have the time. So how can we speed that up? And of course, we're dealing with some legacy culture in all of our organizations. And that's Not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a reality that we have to face, right? We have so many customers that will turn to .NET Core, SQL, and web applications to build an app because it's the talent and the knowledge that they have today. So how do they get upskilled and do things faster, quicker, without having to spend tons of time learning new technology? Well, the good news is we have some capability there. So we look at Power Platform as a tool. A lot of us talk about Power Platform as a business application, but the reality is it's a tool. So getting our IT teams and our IT resources and our leadership to understand that having Power Platform as a tool to help build, assemble, and innovate new products and modernize old ones, that's a big step that we're working towards with our customers as well. And that's something that we can help provide investments and opportunity along with our services and products to help you get along with that stuff quicker. Hyper automation, I like to also say too, that it's application rationalization. As an IT leader, as an IT software developer, you have to rationalize how you build applications. It's not just how quick can you build it and get it deployed. You also have to think about, how do I manage security, identity, the data? And now I have this new ingredient, artificial intelligence. How am I going to include that inside my application rationalization process? Hyperautomation as a concept and the way the Power Platform brings that to bear is part of the package. Security, governance, administration, as I consider one group, if you will. One of the cool things about leveraging Power Platform as we try to hyper-automate our application modernization and development is that those three things are built-in components of the application estate. So you don't have to address them individually with separate products and separate resources. The same technologists that can build a Power Platform can also adhere to the governance, administration, policies, and security that you've already built into your cloud platform without having to recreate it every time they build an app. Each app they build can inherit those policies and governance models throughout the life cycle of your software industry. So as we talk about citizen services infused with AI, it all starts with the data. Everybody says, I want to start learning AI. Where can I start learning about AI? And I tell everybody as quickly as possible, you don't want to start learning about AI to learn about AI. You have to learn about data. So if you don't have the expertise on staff or your data application specialists, the folks that manage all the data estate that you have, they need to transform some of their education on what the data estate looks like when you're going to use it for data models that feed machine learning and AI capabilities. So it all starts with the data. One of the cool things that I think a lot of people aren't aware of is that when we go into things like ChatGPT and we use those large language models to assess our data and we feed it with different prompt technology to gear how it's responding to us with the information it has, one of the cool things is that it actually has the ability to admit its mistakes, challenge incorrect things, and even reject things like inappropriate requests. And I put that right up front in a larger text component of this slide because I think a lot of people's hesitation to use their data in an AI model is the fact that they're afraid of how it's going to be perceived, consumed, and reacted with. But the reality is just like anything else that's new, you have to experiment with that data. And you have to be able to train the model with prompt engineering to help get that data model to respond with the information you need. And there's risk associated with that. Don't wait too long to learn about taking your data and putting it into one of those models and learning how you can train the model to respond properly to the stuff you feed it. Now, Azure OpenAI has a tremendous amount of capability along with Azure Cognitive Services inside the Microsoft Cloud. There's also a tremendous amount of learning that we've put out there. Some of it is 34-minute videos, 1 hour and 30-minute training exercises to start learning about how you can use some of these tools, okay? Now, the security information that's actually gets put out there, people have an assumption as well that if I put my data into an AI model, well, that means it's immediately available for everybody to use out there that has access to AI. That's not accurate. Your information, when you go to put it into a data model, you have the ability to encrypt your information as yours, work with your data sets, and completely protect those data assets from being used in any component of anybody else's Azure AI capability. So learning how that data is secured, learning what data you want to put up there, and the risks. All these type of things right here definitely go to play to shape the policy and procedures that you want to enable your IT teams with to take advantage of the technology. You have to be sure that these things are covered with policy and education. I put some other links down here at the bottom of the slide as well for people to take a look at if they're interested in learning more. So I thought this was a good exercise in boiling it down into just a few key steps. And a lot of times when if you were to say to any IT specialist or any IT technologist, a developer, a database administrator, and say, hey, how do I build a data model to use for AI? That sounds like a pretty boil the ocean question. But these 7 steps, if you follow these directly from an AI builder point of view, which is a tool that you have as part of the Power Platform, if you're starting to look and play around with that, I think this is a good model to just set the boilerplate right there. These are the 7 things that we want to do specifically. Focus on a certain data set. And if you don't know how to do that, reach out to your Microsoft team, ask them, hey, who do we have on our team that can help us take this first exercise? If you have a unified support contract, we have all brand new unified support offerings from a training perspective that are going to teach our customers how to do that as well. So I think it's really important that you guys think about how to engage your Microsoft team to learn how to build data models, and we can provide those resources to you as a team. Okay. All right, so some goals and actions before we go into some live software, which I think everybody will enjoy. So this is a great place to start. Go out there, go out into learn.microsoft.com. There are so many tools out here from a Power Platform and AI Builder perspective on being able to use them with your data models and learning some of the key steps and things that you can do on your own. Most of these are 1 hour, 30 minutes, 17 minutes. What I've done over the past few years as this stuff started to come out is I set something on my calendar, at least 2 to 3 hours a week if I can find it. And I make sure that I go out and I look for new content. I spend that 17 minutes, I spend that 30 minutes, I learn, I take notes, and I make that investment. It's easier to say than do because something always gets in the way. But start carving out time for yourself to learn about these technologies. We're pumping out great information. This is some of the best content we've ever put together on how you can actually get your hands on and start using and learning some of this stuff. So cut that time into your calendar for yourself is one of my biggest advice I can provide to everybody as a team. And this is something I found interesting. This is from something that I follow called VentureBeat, and the article is down at the bottom. But I think a lot of people that have fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or FUD, as we call it, about how AI is going to be risky or how it might not be properly applied to certain use cases, I think it's important for us to responsibly recognize that that is a risk. But when you're talking about data sets and data models that you can control, there are different aspects and learnings that have already taken place and that continue to evolve. I thought that this was a pretty interesting thing when we're looking at serving the public, which is extremely diverse. And as we look to be inclusive with how we build out our data models and use of this technology, and really any technology that we put out there that's citizen facing, as well as the employee base that we support with the technology, I thought this was a good model to understand that there are different components of AI because it does have the term intelligence in it that we want to look at when we're building those data models. So As any data model exercise kicks off, maybe we'll have some future DUG4GOV sessions on building a data model and just focus on that for an hour, which would be cool. How do we apply some of these operational practices to make sure that the data model we're using takes stock in these different components? And this is something that I thought interesting, depending on where you are from an industry perspective in the IT world, or even not, if you're in government leadership or anything to that effect. You may have heard terms in the past from a cybersecurity perspective of red team, blue team. I got my master's in cybersecurity a number of years ago, and one of the coolest aspects of that education process was being part of red team, blue team exercises where you have hackers and counter hackers that have to actually compete and kind of like a capture the flag for nerds. And I enjoyed that part of it. But the funny thing here now is that we're actually using the same terminology as it relates to our use of AI against data models. So there are red team exercises that organizations, companies like Microsoft, companies like yourself, organizations like yourself will have to entertain. And maybe you're not going to call them red team exercises, but the premise of this, and I just wanted to show you this, how far AI has gotten just in the past several months. Red team exercises are going to go at that model and try to get it to answer things wrong and try to break it. Right. So the same way you'd have a red team from a cybersecurity or hacking perspective, you actually want to try to trip up your data model with the use of AI and make sure that you're trimming that and tuning it and making sure that the answers it gets are proper and fit the model that you want to actually put out there. There's a link here too for some Azure AI fundamentals. I think it's a great place to actually get started. If you've never gone out there to that space, I think it's important to check out. So if you click on that, get started with AI on Azure. And I only brought this up just to show you that you have, a total of a 34-minute learning opportunity here. And by the time you come out of that, you're going to know more about AI than the person you're sitting next to, just with 34-minute investment. So go ahead and take advantage of that, okay? And there's a couple things here that I want to address too, that when we look at, hey, how do we go about this? There's a couple key ingredients that we found in a few of the customers that I've had the opportunity and the privilege of working with. And I share this with you because it was pretty impactful, and I think it's a good model for us to look at. Creating the goals that you have for your citizen-facing organization and the tools and the software and technology that's going to meet those, but then also prioritizing them on which one has to be in place first for the next goal to be achieved. And you'll see here, number one on the list from a couple different folks that I've had the privilege of working with is support a transformational culture. Culture is a really big, important thing here that we have to address. You have to have the right collaborative and transformational culture in place in the organization. And I've even seen some customers create an office specifically for digital modernization or digital transformation. And they have people out there as a chief digital officer, as a role that's leading these different components focused on citizen services and improving that experience. So I put this out there as just some fundamental things as you step out there on your expansion of the use of the Power Platform and you potentially look at adding AI into some of that capability. These are some things you might want to make sure you have in place so that you can leverage that with your entire organization. And how can Microsoft help you in some of these exercises? Well, when we look at the challenge that government has in doing more with less, we all know that everybody's busy and constantly playing catch up with the workload or the backlog that they have from a software perspective, business application perspective. One of the things that we found some success in, and you can talk to your Microsoft team about this if you're looking for some help with it, when we look at the Power Platform, a lot of times we're approached to say, hey, I want to build a new business application because the business has come to IT and said they need X, Y, and Z, and we want to maybe use the Power Platform to build that. So that's a contextual use case that's brought to IT. The challenge is that business really never comes to the IT organization and says, hey, we need a Power App. They don't. And they also don't come to IT and say, hey, we need a .NET over SQL on a web server app. That's what we'd like, please. They don't ask. Those are tools that you as IT professional and business technologists have at your fingertips. So if you don't have the Power Platform tool set in the hands of your IT professionals and your business technologists, they don't have the tools they need to respond with that capability for hyper automation and the business application requests that are coming into them. So where we like to start when we talk about, hey, how can I start using AI in my business? It's like, well, are you using Power Platform yet? And a lot of the customers are just starting to get their feet wet with that. And we're like, okay, well, how can we help? So this is just something to consider. Putting a small amount of Power Platform licensing into the IT landscape, surrounding that with some governance and some administration processes set up with managed environments, and then following that up with several different learnings specifically for IT to get their feet wet with building model-driven apps and building data sets to use with AI Builder. That is stuff that we can bring to the table as Microsoft resources. It's a very small investment for the software licensing for the IT professional, but it gives them a wealth of capability to begin modernizing and innovating with the tech. So this is just one kind of model that we can explore with you as a service organization as well. I like to just show this so when we talk about Power Platform and Microsoft Business Applications as a whole, the Power Platform is basically everything in that middle tier, as well as the bottom section there when we talk about managed environments, Power FX, AI Builder, data connections. All right, so if you don't understand any one component of this, this is something that we typically have a lot of great information out on the website about to help learn. You can take different training courses, both from LinkedIn Learning as well as learn.microsoft.com and any one of these components. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move into a live environment here, and we're going to build a little software with AI and Copilot. Anybody interested in doing that? All right. And I love talking about hyper automation. It's one of the things that we share with our customers on every opportunity we get as of late. And if you're familiar with Microsoft's mission statement to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more, I think it's perfectly fitting for us to take an opportunity to jump into Power Apps in a live environment and actually use Copilot to build an application from scratch just by telling it what kind of app we want. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so let's use Copilot to build an app from scratch. And that is a robot building a computer, in case you can't see the graphics. So let me go ahead and stop sharing that. And I will open that up. Okay. All right. Someone on my team, let me know if you can see my screen again, please.
Yep, you're all good.
Okay. So this is inside a commercial cloud environment. It's functionality that's working its way down to us if we're in a GCC environment. Some of our customers have even taken advantage of standing up a commercial separate tenant just to start learning, innovating, and playing with this, kind of like an innovation island, air-gapped away from their GCC and government data sets and worlds that they live in on a daily basis, but creating this environment in the Microsoft cloud just to learn, innovate, and grow with the AI technology and some of these capabilities, not only in advance of it being available in the GCC, but to consistently have that as kind of a lab environment. So this is a commercial lab environment that I have, and you can see that I'm just in a normal make.powerapps.com browser. And I have this new feature that's up here, and it's asking me, what should I do? Let's build an app. So again, if we want to be able to help everybody on the planet achieve more or do more with less, and how do we make technology work for them, I decided to play around with it a little bit over the past few weeks. And I'm going to ask this, and I'm just pasting in my content. I need an application to register my dog and the details about its breed, vaccination, my home address. And the application also needs me to pay for the registration fee. Well, if I feed that into my model, immediately It's going to take the elements I asked for, and it uses AI to break down the logic conversationally that I've thrown at it. So I've given it a prompt. So that's an example of a prompt. So just by putting that in there, it gives me a table structure of the registration ID, the name of the dog, the breed, vaccination, yes or no, an address, a fee, paid, yes or no. All right, well, I probably need more than that if I want to build an application. So I probably need to track the citizen or the resident applying for the license, right? So if I throw that into my model, it's going to say, okay, well, looking at what I've already built, let me take that information and see if I can factor that in now as well. So you'll see here that it's thinking, and this is what it's doing is it's assembling a mock table structure for an app. So now I have the fact that, okay, it asked citizen or resident, but the citizen or resident needs to be a little bit more information than that. I'm going to need stuff like first name, last name, email address, phone number, you name it. So I'm going to tell it to change, and I'm going to say, okay, I'd like you to maybe fix this. And if it created a table column that I probably don't need, as it's doing a little bit better job of assessing my needs as I feed it more prompt information, now we can see that if I slide over, I have first name, last name, phone number, email address added to my table, but this citizen column here is not needed. So I can say just by typing, remove the citizen / resident table column, please. And believe it or not, it does like when we say please. It actually appreciates the conversational integrity of what you're trying to ask for. You can even tell it to act as a particular type of resource if you've played around with ChatGPT. It's pretty interesting. So it's going in there now, and it just dropped out my, make sure it removed it. Yep, it removed it. And now I probably need to know the birthday of the dog, the sex of the dog, and has it been neutered or spayed or something like that. And we did this live for a customer a couple of weeks back. They said, well, we need a new application that we want to make it on a mobile phone so people can register their pet. And they want to be out in the public dog park saying, hey, we noticed that your pet's not registered. It's not a problem. We just want to register it here. It's $15. Can you register your pet so that we can get that taken care of and get a license in place? And we said, yeah, that's actually not a hard thing to do. So now we have our dog registration table updated, and at the end here, we have neutered, spayed, sex, birthday, email. So now we built our entire component there. And now I'm going to say, you know what? That looks great. I got every single table column I want. Please go ahead and build that app for me. Now, I'm not using a stitch of code. I'm not going create table, new table, add column, add field, create dropdown, give options, yes, no. I'm using logical expression applied with a large language model and AI infused with something called Copilot inside the Power Platform. And it's going to build me a Canvas application from scratch based on what I asked it. Now, is it going to be perfect based upon the conversational elements I've fed to it? No. Did it help me build an application in less than 6 minutes? Yes, it did. Now, can I take that table structure and create a model-driven app off it? Can I add it to a Dynamics application that I already have? Can I hook it to an invoicing table in Dynamics Finance and Operations and feed me an invoice from what gets submitted here? So this is just an amazing capability if you think about using AI to build something like this. And if I want to go out here then and say, well, what does this application look like in production? I can go ahead and hit play. Okay. And this is the PC version of the app, right? If I want to look at the phone version of the app, it'll actually ask me right here on the screen, what do I want to look at, right? Pretty cool. Right, if I want to say, let's see, Motorola or Samsung right there. Right, I can even say, what does it look like there? I can hit new, and I can scroll right through the screens and feed my information in there and hit check, right? If I go back to a tablet, I can go back to an Apple iPad if I'm out there in the field, or a Surface device or something to that effect, right? So if you guys haven't seen that kind of technology before, that is the power of AI infused from Copilot and a Power Platform perspective. Right? So I just wanted to make sure that we top this off with a do more with less and an example of what we actually have. So with that, I reached the end of the presentation here, and would be happy to field any questions that we have if you'd like.
Hey, Dave. So there were a couple questions that came in. First one, where did these stats come from? So it must have been one of your early slides.
Yep, we'll post that with the presentation. That was from an Accenture post that they did on AI in government business, public sector.
Okay. We had one, is this documentation staying current as Microsoft constantly updates and enhances? I think the answer is yeah, as we can, obviously.
You know, there was a time where all of us would have been like, man, that's an old thing that I'm looking at. That's an old reference that I'm looking at. Today, that is very few and far between. The documentation and our products are evolving so fast. We're pretty impressed, at least I am personally, on how quick this stuff is updated and refreshed. There are new learnings out on learn.microsoft.com on a daily and even hourly basis, I found, on some of the new stuff that we launch when it becomes available in the market.
Actually good. Somebody wants to drop a link in the chat. Must be to the Learn, maybe stuff that you were looking for or that you were showing. So maybe that's
Sure.
That's in the presentation though too, right?
It is in the presentation, yes.
All right, cool. Is Copilot available in GCC? And I answered not yet, but it's on the roadmap, right?
It is on the roadmap, yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to mention to that question again too. It's not about the features or functions not working there. As you can imagine, policy and practice has to trickle its way through as we put those products there. That's one of the reasons that we've had a few customers start to look at that innovation island, almost like a research lab, to get some of that functionality, because it's commercial, it's fully featured, and we can talk to you more about that as an aspect of opportunity for you as a customer to look at. But great way to get your hands wet, great way to learn some of these tools. You know that eventually this stuff matriculates down. If you haven't noticed, it seems to have moved into those environments faster than it used to, which is encouraging. But no reason you can't use some of it commercially available if you want to get out there and in a separate environment and start that exercise. What else you got, Chris?
Let's see. When will it be available? Would Power Apps work with unstructured data? I think it can. I mean, yeah.
It can. That question kind of rubs the data model premise the wrong way. So,
yeah.
But there are a number of situations where we have unstructured data, and being able to point it to that unstructured data and make sense of it. I would like to offer many times, it might be better to use some Azure resources, some Azure Cognitive or OpenAI resources, to take that unstructured data and apply a model to it, right? It'll suggest some modeling, it'll try to make structure to it, and then match Power Apps over the top of it. Because that way you're going to train, clean, and orient your data to make the app more efficient. Keep in mind, someone has to use the app. So if they're using an app over unstructured data, that's difficult. Now, Power BI can look at unstructured data and try to assemble a graphic representation of structure to it. And there's a couple other analytics capabilities that we have there. But specifically building a Power App over unstructured data, it's not that it's impossible, but I would come up with probably a few reasons of why you want to do a little cleanup of that information or organization first.
Absolutely, yeah. Would it build out a model-driven app instead of Canvas apps? I don't think it's doing that yet, is it?
Well, the nice thing is, and I'm glad you asked. So now that we have this app, if I go back, right? If I go back over to, let's see here. So of course it built the table for the dog registration app that I have, right? It'll take a second to load because I'm asking it quickly here. So because I have that table structure, I can now go in and build a new app off of the dog registration table, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I have a Canvas app that it built, but because of Dataverse, that table structure is there. So if I now want to just build a model-driven app, which is, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm a bigger fan of the model-driven app. Sounds like the person who asked that question is too. Canvas apps are easy, quick, and efficient for thin and even some diverse applications. But I like to build model-driven apps and then expose them different ways for the user. So I would just take this now that it built the Canvas app, create a brand new app. It'll say what you want to build. I'm going to say model-driven. It'll say where you want to get it from. I'm going to say from a table in Dataverse. And I'm going to assemble my model-driven app, which is cool. Next question there, I think I see is ChatGPT integrated with Power Apps? So Copilot is leveraging Azure OpenAI fueled with ChatGPT to provide some of that capability that you just saw in building an application. So there is ChatGPT in that equation through the Azure OpenAI service that makes that available to some of our Copilot products. Is it direct? No, it's not. It's not ChatGPT plugged into Power Apps. It's through Azure OpenAI service behind our products.
Yep. And then any concerns about AI taking and learning information in our organization and sharing it for other clients? Well, I know we can lock it down if you do it in Azure. So. Yeah,
I think the best part of that question, Nicole, is that you think that way. The same way, if you again, I like to always take a cybersecurity point of view. If you think about assumed breach from cybersecurity, like, you know, that really changes your security posture and the way that you prioritize securing identity and data and those type of things. Securing the data, it all starts with the data we talked about today. Make sure your data is secure. When you use AI specifically and point it at a data model, you have the ability to secure that as well. Does AI have the capability to come in, learn all your data and export it out and rip it away? That's not accurate. I think that's how a lot of people think about it before they actually learn on how the tools are applied. But that's part of the learning exercise I hope that we've inspired with this session today is get out there, get some data models in a secure workspace that you can work with and engage and learn about how you measure that security and assess it. And I think you'll answer your questions as you move forward.
Yeah, great
Any
questions.
No more questions? Okay.
I think we're out of time too, so.
We are. It's right at the top of the hour. I love it when a plan comes together, Chris. So thank you guys very much for your attention today. If there's any additional follow-up questions for us of the team, please make sure you follow up and go out there and check into that DUG4GOV membership. It is something free. It's a service that we provide to our customers to share information and collaborate with you all. And I thank you for your time.
Thanks, everybody.